with another review.
Happy New Year!
Yes, Happy New Year. I know. Brand new year, brand new classic album. This
Brand new
album.
Chatmonster
Introduce ourselves
episode.
too. I feel like that's a New Year's resolution we should have for the pod.
What is?
What is?
Introduce ourselves.
What's that?
Oh yeah.
My name is Victor.
Right.
Oh God.
We'll introduce
no.
after.
Off to a racing start.
So we're inducting a new album into the Chatmonster Hall of Fame. This is the fourth album. It's actually on my wall right now. It has a little plant in front of it. It's White Light, White Heat. I'll zoom in that in editing. Their second album, 1968. I actually thought, for whatever reason, I thought this was their third album, and their self-titled, The Velvet Underground, was their second. I don't know why I thought that. And it is the last album with John Cale. Let's just go off with, I guess, my first question is...
The initial thoughts.
What is your initial thoughts?
Initial thoughts?
Oh
my God. You caught my neck.
You guessed it.
Oh my God, that was.
Initially, on my very first listen, I didn't really like it. It was just it's so harsh and abrasive and noisy that, at first it was just too much for me. Although I don't love it, I think I discovered a lot more about it that I liked.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat as Evan. It took a while. Like the first listen, you definitely have to get used to things. That was like kind of just setting the bar. The mindset that you have to go into with this album, it's very different from what we're hearing now.
My first listen was a bit of an adjustment. I've listened to Velvet Underground self-titled, and I really loved that album. And this I felt was just a lot more noisy.
I think that it was quite noisy. It's not a lot noisier than some of the songs on their first album. The Banana. Everybody knows that one. And I picked this album because Banana, this is probably their least successful and least known album. It's still heralded or whatever. How did the track list feel? Did it feel just long enough? Did it feel unbalanced? Do you think the song, I guess, did they flow together?
I think it was, I actually really like having the title track as the first song. It kind of, most of these songs here, as soon as they start, they get right into like the groove by like beat 2 on the head in terms of like getting you into the groove, especially because it's so repeated. It's hard for me to look at the track list because I love like almost every song. In terms of like Sister Ray, if we're going off that, I thought it was like great having it at the end.
For me, you can look at this album and kind of draw parallels to like Metal by Pink Floyd, which we did last year.
Yeah,
where
you
it's
can.
a small number of songs and then like a really long song at the end. Its track list was pretty good. I think there was a good balance of like noisy songs and less noisy songs, breaking up the harshness. Obviously, Sister Ray has like a lot of noise at the end.
Yeah, like they said, I don't think this album would have worked as well if Sister Ray was anywhere else than the last song.
All right, so what'd you think? What'd you think about Whole Lotta Red? Let's talk about Whole Lotta Red.
You're muted.
What did you think about the stories of the album? But obviously, like, The Gift is literally just a short story. The last 3 tracks are kind of, in my opinion, or like I think it's kind of the general consensus. They're kind of connected. It's like Heard Her, Call My Name, Here She Comes, and then Sister Ray. It's like sort of like this ethereal drug trip or woman or whatever. Did you think that the stories of the album worked well? Were they engaging, or were they just pretentious?
No, I actually really like them looking in. It's always cool to look into the lyrics more because, especially on The Gift, like the vocal mix is really in the back, kind of just read like something straight out of an English class. And that short story was great. I love that story. The other ones and the other lyrical writing I thought was just up to the same standard of the instrumentation was. It was like right there with it.
Yeah, I thought The Gift was the best of the storytelling for me. It was very, very vivid. I loved the descriptive words. Here we go. With like the final scene with the knife going through the box and the cushioning and just all that was beautiful. Box and the cushioning. I didn't catch like the flowing of the story from like Here She Comes Now to Sister Ray. I didn't know if that was one cohesive story. You said that was one cohesive thing, or I wouldn't say that they don't work together. I hadn't picked up on the fact that it was all, I guess.
Yeah, they don't have to be. That was just sort of my interpretation. Yeah. They don't really have to be that.
Okay.
But I didn't also kind of realize that they were or could be interpreted as one like greater overarching story. I thought we said that the writing is very well done, and I thought the delivery, I think John Cale tells the story. I think his delivery was also very good. It was
so I like listened to the story because I had to like tune into that. After re-listening to it, I was keen on wondering if it was gonna sound as well. But I think the guitar kind of, I guess I have a lot of like notes where it says the guitar is kind of just like dicking around in the back because it's a lot of like improv. I thought that like
added to the replay value a lot.
I agree with that on the gift especially. I also forgot to mention Lady Godiva's operation is kind of like a short story. It's about like a failed lobotomy of like a transsexual. And the gift I think is super well written. Fun fact, it's actually Lou Reed wrote it. John Cale sang it. I think he has a really great like sarcastic, like almost snobby, like I don't know, he just has like a weird, it's a
like
weird
emotionless
vocal.
almost.
Yeah,
it was weird.
It's
It
detached.
felt
It's like a
posh.
narration. Yeah, when he reads the dialogue of the two girls, and they're like the words are obviously like have emotion behind them, and he just doesn't even like give them any emotion. I thought it was funny.
And
it's
it's
a very
really,
well written story.
it's so intense. Like at the end, like the first time it's intense. After I listened to it like a million times, it's so cool, but like it's not as intense, obviously. But like it's just like, like what's gonna happen?
Pretty much only covers like taboo topics, right?
Yeah.
Like no one else was saying stuff like this, and this album is all about stuff like that, which is kind of interesting. This album is like one of the first instances of explicit reference to sex in like popular music ever.
Yeah, it is hard to think about just how like crazy this must have sounded like back then, like when it came out. This came out when my dad was born, the same year my dad was born. Like imagine, it's that old.
Damn, you think he was conceived while listening to Sister Ray?
Yeah, it was in. Oh no, he was listening to Lady Godiva's operation.
When them guys outside, little bitch, you better be ready.
When did Be Happening come out? Was that 72?
85.
No, that was like 80s. Yeah, so
85?
so the big jump wasn't for another couple of years, and then
Yeah, I mean the big like significant like landmark.
Quantum Leap.
What did you think of many of the lead vocals and harmonizations throughout the track list? Do you think that they were lost in the mix? Do you think that, there was a lot of harmonizations on Lady Godiva's operation, some ad-libs, some like Chewbacca sounds?
I think White Light, White Heat is just like a super standard like late 60s rock song, at least in terms of like mixing and tempo and pretty much all musical aspects. It's pretty like, it's not really doing anything crazy. I think that the vocals maybe could have been a little bit louder on the gift. Maybe it was Lady Godiva's, I can't remember, where they have like someone else come in at some part and say like a couple lines, and it was like a totally different mix. Would you guys remember which song that was in?
Yeah, that was
That
Lady
was Lady
Godiva's.
Seriously mixed, or if it seems like they put like 3 microphones in like the jam room and kind of did that, because even like he's saying, Lady Godiva's, either they mixed it super well where you can like hear the voices increasing in volume while they're saying their phrase, or they're literally just like walking up to the mic and like saying it and then like, walking out while they're saying it. But other than that, it seems that like the whole mix is purposeful, and I really like the mix of it.
Out of time, and then there's, you remember at the end of the song, he's like a Chewbacca sound. He's like,
There's like the heartbeat like bass drum thing that's out of time. It's just kind of cool.
I don't know. It just felt really weird to me. I mean, I guess it's the point. It's supposed to be like this botched lobotomy, obviously. So
they would just like record the songs, and then like they just whatever they sounded like, they would just like be done with them.
One vocal performance I wanted to highlight that really stood out to me was "Heard Her Call My Name." This is my favorite track. I guess I'm getting ahead of myself, but Lou Reed, this is probably my favorite Lou Reed performance. He puts it all out on the line, very energetic, and like at the end of phrases, it'll be like, it's just like the most electrifying performance I've ever heard out of Lou Reed. Probably my favorite rock vocal performance, just crazy.
yeah, one thing that I wrote down about that song, backup singers and like behind it, saying like "Her," it sounded like a Beach Boys Lou Reed collab, and I absolutely loved it. It was really cool.
Got a lot of feedback.
It is pretty poppy, like a lot of the harmonizations they pull off. Where was it too overbearing, or was it too overbearing? Was a song like Sister Ray too repetitive in the noise riffs, it being only 3 chords for the whole 18 minutes, really playing with that?
Lady Godiva's, the second half, they did a lot more than just like play 3 chords and blast these weird like Chewbacca noises. And Sister Ray, I had trouble focusing for the full amount of time because it doesn't really develop. Like I would, it's like 3 chords or 4 chords for like 20 minutes almost. And obviously there's a lot to get into with. All right, Scott, you're back. Yeah, so I was saying like, obviously there's a lot.
Oh no.
That was a little ironic. All of the noise and crazy stuff that's happening, but I do wish there was a little more progression in the rest of the instrumental. Like if there was a bridge or it key changed at some point, just to spark my focus once again, maybe halfway through. Because after 12 minutes of like the same few chords, it does start to get a little.
What I thought about like the repetitive section, love the driving, 8th note type of rhythm that they use on other songs like and White Light White Heat. I really love the Heard Her Call My Name solo. Like that solo is just crazy. He really rips through everything. I think as for Sister Ray, I can definitely see what you're saying. I really don't think they were trying to make an appealing album at all. Like that's kind of the personally really love it. I don't skip it every time I hear it. Like
I think like Sister Ray kind of feels like a jam session
yeah.
in the studio instead. Usually you have a jam session on stage in a tour.
While it's not like the most accessible, I think you do get used to like the sound and the noisiness of the album pretty quickly, and it is very straightforward structurally. The most shocking part of the album to me was when they had like a drum rhythm switch up around like 5 minutes in Sister Ray, quieted down in the middle of Sister Ray 2, which I thought kind of helped with the progression.
It sounded like kind of like an organ.
Yeah, I
like
think it's an organ.
Amp turned up to 11.
I thought it was an organ. Yeah. I think listening to it from today's perspective, it's like very, very noisy. And why not, if you can make a little bit of noise, make as much as you can to see where it can go.
Especially in Sister Ray, it does have that like entrancing, almost like numbing feeling that I suppose a lot of probably noise listeners do. I'm not like a noise rock or noise specialist. There's like a ton. There's a huge rabbit hole you can go down with that stuff that I'm sure a lot of people know much more about than me.
Yeah, when I started on my daytime, the main line is sideways, I'm shooting a heroin, but
I guess we'll go to favorite and least favorite or cut, and then we can finish.
My favorite song was I Heard Her Call My Name. So much fun to listen to. The solo every time was one of my favorite things to look forward to in the album. While I did like it, I would cut White Light, White Heat just because I don't know, I didn't feel like it was as innovative as the other songs.
All right, me next. I'm gonna say the same exact songs as Scott.
Least favorite is Lady Godiva's Operation. I wanted like more emotion vocally, and I thought like the like random voices coming in was like, I didn't really wasn't a big fan of that. And my favorite is gonna have to go to Sister Ray. Just an amalgamation of this whole album. They blended the musical instruments and like the vocals were backing up the music. It was just I really like this one.
I think I'll say Sister Ray. I guess I just think it's crazy. You can catch so much. Maybe a little bit blasphemously, I will pick The Gift to cut. I've just heard it so many times that it offers the least to me. So yeah, so I guess concluding thoughts, I guess what would you rate it, etc.?
Well, my initial thought.
I thought this was a great noise rock album. Like I haven't really gotten into any. I thought it was extremely impressive how they made a bunch of noisy melodies and like improvisations and they like mixed that into like somewhat cohesive music and relatively easy to listen to. On top of that, great like lyrics and great stories. 9.2 out of 10.
So while this is not my favorite album of all time that I've ever listened to in my life, I guess overall I still enjoyed it. Clearly very influential for a number, which is my favorite part of the review every week. I'll give it a 7.5.
Checking my notes here. Upon first listen, didn't really get into it or understand it at all. The comparison of the noise that was happening, the harmonies that were happening, and like I Heard Her Call My Name that were just like, almost run-of-the-mill soft rock that was going on at that time. And then this harsh noise, this like juxtaposition of the two. It was honestly really interesting.
Wow.
Because of that,
Wow.
I'm going to give it an 8.1.
Okay, so for me, I guess it's kind of lame to pick your classic pick and then, give it a 10 out of 10, but I'm just going to say I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. It's just one of my favorite albums. I mean, there's no album that's completely flawless. Like any album that I'd give a 10 out of 10, there would be like a decent fault maybe, or even a small fault. I think that I'm going to be like, oh, maybe I'll be bored of Sister Ray this time. Like I've listened to it so many times. Like maybe I won't want to listen to the whole thing. But every time I listen to it, like, gotta listen to the whole thing. We'll be back next week with actual good music.
Be back next year.
Be back next year with actual good music. This was just the shitty music hour that we wanted to pull off. But yeah, hope you enjoyed.
Tell us your favorite noise group in the comments, for your favorite appliance sound that you listen to in your house.
What kind of vacuum you use.